All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am so excited to be kicking off our webinar here. I am joined by Pavna Rana, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Nextiva, and Brian Cantor, Managing Director of CCW Digital. Today, we are going to be discussing the secrets to a seamless customer journey, which I think is so helpful because we are at a time where experiences often feel fractured and fragmented, and customers have to piece together this journey just to get the best resolution rather than engaging in a way that feels really intuitive and seamless for them. So, we are going to dive into why this has become such a challenge today and how we can facilitate a more unified and effortless experience for customers. So, I'm so excited to have this conversation with both of you. Welcome, Brian and Pavna.
Thanks, Brooke.
Absolute pleasure to be here. This is one of those topics where we know how critical it is. We know how essential it is. We're not breaking any new ground on that front. But what we need to do is make it a reality. We look at stats year over year and we see time and time again, experiences are fractured. Customers are being disappointed. And as we look to the new year, as we look to an era where the customer experience is more important than ever, we have to take action. I'm thrilled to be joined by my co-presenter here, who is going to provide a lot of great action recommendations, a lot of great tips, and really empower us to move in the right direction. So thrilled to be part of this discussion.
As am I. Brooke, thanks for teeing us up. Brian, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. As a brief introduction, I'm Pavna Rana. I've been with Nextiva for just a few months now. I focus on product and industry marketing. One of the reasons I joined this company is because of they're really mission driven. The focus for the company has really been to empower human connections. I think we're going to get into that. We're a unified customer experience management company, so we care deeply about customer experiences and enabling organizations and companies like the ones that are on this call today to really elevate CX and employee experiences as well. I'm going to talk about the technologies and the tools in place and how to just get future ready.
I love that. I mean, it's such a great place to start. We are obviously always working towards the future, but I want to talk a little bit and start us off by discussing the state of experiences today, because as Brian mentioned before, we see so many customer complaints, things like inefficient journeys, generic experiences, and really friction-filled interactions. So why are we doing this? Why are we striving for seamless experiences? And what is kind of preventing us right now from achieving it? And I'll start with you, Pavna.
Great. As we look at just customer experiences and where we are today, we are in an experience economy, and customer experience is becoming that economic driver and a growth driver. So I know CSAT scores, NPS scores matter so deeply to everyone, in the customer experience or the customer service space. But customer experience is really driving the bigger business outcomes. It's impacting revenue, it's impacting costs, it's impacting overall lifetime value of the customers. And more increasingly, I think the stats are about 80% of customers think that a company's experience is just as important as its products or its services. So in this world that's with products that are highly commoditized, very competitive landscape, customer experience is going to be that vital, enduring differentiator. And the way to differentiate and create great customer experience is through seamless, omni-channel, that seamless kind of a journey with contextual support. I think we're in a place currently where customers evaluate a company based on their last interaction. It takes one poor interaction for them to switch brands, so that customer loyalty has eroded. And they're looking for a lot of different things. They want to be able to self-serve. They want digital first channels. There's channel proliferation. So I think in order to meet those sort of changes currently, we're challenged. We're challenged in providing that seamless journey. I think there's a lot of tech debt burden that companies are carrying with older architecture, older legacy systems that's making it harder to adopt the right technologies and tools that'll help them have data in one place, not have data silos, that will all go a long way in delivering that seamless sort of an experience that we're all looking for.
And I want to echo something Pavna said right at the onset of this webinar, which was building a human connection. We're not differentiating based on having the best price or the flashiest product or the best marketing campaign. Don't get me wrong, those are all important, but we're winning business, we're winning loyalty by making a human connection, by letting this customer know they mean something to us, they mean something to our employees. And when we design our products, when we execute our services, we're doing it for them. Well, the number one way to ruin that illusion, to end this notion of humanity, frankly, is to not connect your experience. When you have no context or no recognition of where the customer has been, how can you anticipate where they're going? How can you have respect for what their journey has looked like? How can you understand what challenges they're facing? And how can you deliver the right answer for them at the right time? You simply can't do it. Brooke, you and I do a lot of research in this space, and we talk about the notion of a frictionless, personalized, predictive, and proactive experience. And when you think about what it takes to deliver that experience, that is ultimately going to come down to seamlessness. If it is not easy to move from channel to channel, from agent to agent, from bot to bot, then it's not going to be easy for the customer. The second you're repeating information, answering the same question over and over again, figuring out how to jump from touch point to touch point, guess what's not happening? You don't feel it's convenient. You don't feel it's easy. You don't feel it's quick. Obviously, if data and context can't move between those channels, it's not going to be personalized. And if we don't know what the typical journey looks like, if we can identify the root causes of problems as well as the goals and intentions of these customers, we can't predict their needs. And of course, we can't proactively meet them. Now, as much as I want to pat myself on the back, pat Pavna on the back for saying amazing things here, the truth is we're not really saying anything that right now that everyone on this call doesn't already know. Omnichannel is not a shocking new concept. We're not winning any awards for innovation for saying that you want to connect your experience and you want to be omnichannel. However, why it's so frustrating at times and why it's so discouraging is that we know these concepts are almost cliche. We know they're overplayed and we know they're universal goals for our community, yet they're not being delivered. Right now, from CCW Digital Research into the consumer, we know that only 17% of customers feel that they're even getting a consistent interaction across touch points. So forget overwhelming personalization, forget that wow factor. They don't even feel like the experience is consistent. They're not even getting the same commitment to them, the same answers, the same outcomes as they move throughout the journey. That just ends any notion of omnichannel. You then look at the fact that only 21% of customers believe that they can choose where and how to engage with a brand. Now, again, a fundamental notion of customer centricity is this idea that the customer has the power. They have the ability to choose where the interaction happens. Well, that's what we say, but what we do is in 4 to 5 cases, evidently, not actually give them that power. And the second the customer doesn't even have as fundamental a choice as what channel to use or how to engage, there goes any idea that you're putting them first. There goes any idea that you're personalizing because they don't even have power to make such a basic preference. And then finally, we have data showing that having to repeat information, having to re-ask questions is one of the largest, most common pain points facing customers today. Again, this idea that you start in a chatbot, you start in a digital channel, you answer all these questions, you share all the information, you escalate to that live agent, and their first question is, can you tell me your name or can you tell me why you're getting in touch? There goes, again, any belief that this brand knows you, cares about you, anticipates for you. Instead, you're just another number, you're just another buyer, and unfortunately for the business, you're just another customer who's going to jump to a competitor the second the chance emerges.
I think what you just talked about, Brian, is so critical. Customers desire, I know I do, to be known, to be understood, right? And until you feel that, you don't trust or you don't have loyalty and there isn't a long-term relationship being developed. So, and it starts with collecting the right data. It starts with taking a lot of interest in when a customer or a prospect is in that early decision-making phase, right? Before when they're doing the research, whether it's on a social media channel, whether it's on your website, whether it's on other people's websites, whatever you can do to start to build that profile for that customer, to start to understand what their intents are, and then have that data readily accessible so you can action on it. And I think that's where the challenges start to arise. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, we're talking about concepts that we've been talking about for decades. And we're talking to people who care deeply about this, who built their careers within customer experience and customer service. But yet we're challenged in getting it right. And I think one of the reasons we have that challenge is there's some like we were operating all on these other systems or legacy systems. And in this race, right, to adopt to changing customer needs, to adopt to like channel proliferation and being optimizing across all channels, I think a lot of what we're seeing is a lot of customers have added on point solutions. They've added on some latest tech, and that tech might be great, but it doesn't fit like perfect. It doesn't fit well within your current tech stack, or it's just like a bolt-on that's not fully integrated into your system. So you've got disjointed systems, which means you've got disjointed data, which means you've got disjointed customer experiences. So I think everyone is trying to solve for it, but it's like, let's take a step back. Let's think about the tech debt burden, that we've amassed, and take a more platform-based approach, or start to think about differently what is causing some of these gaps or these challenges in that journey, in delivering the promise I think we're all trying to deliver on.
And yeah, I think you bring up a great point, which is the correlation or the connection, if you will, between omni-channel and personalization. Now, Brooke, I know you probably are going to ask us plenty of questions throughout the discussion, but maybe dive a little bit deeper into this notion of personalization. But just to kind of start off here, what I think is really important is that personalization gives a why, a purpose behind the omni-channel movement. And when I think about like what Pavna just mentioned about fragmented systems and bolt-ons and just kind of adding new channels, the reason why this has happened is because we've fundamentally misunderstood the purpose of why everything needs to be connected. So we love to say, oh, omni-channel is connection, multi-channel is just being everywhere all at one time. But in reality, even though we know that distinction, so many brands end up following a multi-channel ecosystem because at the end of the day, they don't really appreciate the why behind connecting everything. In their eyes, as long as you can press a button and move from one channel to the other, it's connected. But when it comes to the customer right now, connection is not just about the literal ease with which they can move between channels. It's about the symbolic gesture of going between channels because it's a cohesive journey, not because it's a fragmented experience. And you can't know a customer if they can't move between them in a meaningful way.
And it's the context. It's preserving the context as they move through channels.
Definitely. I mean, great points all around. You guys both talked about the challenges that are kind of preventing us from delivering this seamless experience. But I want to shift the conversation in the other direction. We are talking about this seamless journey, this seamless experience, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into what that actually looks like. So what does a fully mature version of an omni-channel unified experience look like? And what sets it apart from that fragmented reality that we're really experiencing right now?
Well, that's the idealistic one is like the much tougher question. It's much easier to be negative than it is to be positive, but I'm happy to jump in here because ultimately, I think sometimes when we think of this, it becomes so lofty, it becomes so aspirational that we get discouraged and we think it's impossible and we don't take the step. The truth is, it doesn't literally have to be every time a customer gets in touch, your agent can spout off every conceivable fact about that customer, know every feeling they've ever had during every interaction. I mean, your back end should have that information, but that's not what needs to be echoed to the customer on the front lines. What needs to be delivered is a sense of every bit of effort I as a customer put forth, that effort feels like it's materializing in a better experience. So if I answer a question, then that question doesn't need to be asked again. If I buy something, you know that I bought that product and you can tailor future interactions, future marketing, future conversations around that product. If I want to say, you know what, today have a lot of time, I want to talk on the phone, I can talk on the phone to have that conversation. If tomorrow I have a follow-up issue, but I happen to be on a plane and I can't talk on the phone, I can use a text-based channel and still have the same conversation, not have to start from scratch. I think another real key thing here is also to appreciate the notion of a relationship, that it feels like the more I interact, the more the brand knows me. So again, if I use a food delivery service and I buy one meal once, I don't expect them to know my tastes. I don't expect them to know what my favorite restaurant is. I want them to give me options. But If I order for a month and I constantly order from the same type of restaurant, always order around the same cart size at the same time of day, then I do expect future experiences to be tailored to me. I think when we start to see this, what's really notable here is we see so much content tailoring in our everyday lives. We see, shopping sites, streaming media where you get recommendations based on who you are. And yet then when it comes time for customer service, we don't always feel that same level of recognition, when in reality, customer service should be so much more built around winning us over. So again, I think the thing is basically each bit of effort you put forth is you never have to put forth that effort again, and it leads to more value. That I think is a foundation to start thinking about seamlessness.
I really appreciate your comment about customer service. I think I think a lot of organizations do a great job early on. That's why they acquire the customer, right? And after that, it starts to wean off. And the experience starts to erode, often is when you need to call customer support, whether it's through a virtual agent. Often that, I think, is what we're seeing. They don't have the context about the whole history and all of the interactions when they're getting to the customer support. And then you have the drop off and you have the customer churn, the retention falls off. So it's critical throughout. And by then, to your point, Brian, you've already had that customer for a while. You should know them. You should understand them. When you first acquire that customer, the threshold is, the bar is low, but it increases over time. The point about repetitiveness, I know I get frustrated by it. Everyone does. And there's such simple tools to address that. Real-time transcription when a customer is on a call with one of your frontline employees is an easy way. They can just scroll up and see what was said, or preserving that history of that interaction. So the next time a customer contacts you, you know exactly what they had spoken about previously. So there's some stickiness, there's that contextual continuity. I feel like I'm going to say that word a lot on this webinar. Mm-hmm. But I also want to talk about, go back to your question about what does maturity look like? I think there's a few things. I know on the call we have people who have UCAS and then they have CCAS. And so I think it's unified communications along with contact center communications, along with social media management. Those sort of platforms can help with that maturity model. But also, if I just think about from one of our customers' point of view, there's so many different stages to developing maturity. I think an early stage in omni-channel maturity is there's silos. There might be only one channel. Then there's another channel. For retail, as an example, they might not have their online connected with their offline POS systems or with their supply chain or warehouse in those early stages. And as they progress, that connection of all those backend systems with the customer-facing systems becomes critical in having that omni-channel journey. Same thing when I think about financial services, having all of their channels then connected to the core back-end systems of record. For insurers, it's having those channels then integrated with policy administration systems, with the claims management systems. That's when you start to develop and have a really mature sort of an omni-channel experience, when there's connectivity across your back-end and your front-end systems across channels.
And Pavna, I want to call out something you brought up here, because I almost feel like when we use the term omni-channel, it understates what we're really trying to achieve here. I think so often in these kinds of conversations in the customer contact community, we do focus just on that seamlessness between channels. So I have a broken phone and I get the same answer whether I text, use email or call up. And that is important, don't get me wrong. But what you mentioned is it's not just about the channels for service. It's also about making sure that marketing is aligned with onboarding, which is aligned with sales, which is aligned with service as well. So it's really a two-faceted thing. It's first of all looking at that relationship with the customer as singular and context-driven, emotion-driven, intent-driven, and really trying to use every moment of touch with that customer, every moment of truth to build a stronger relationship. And then as you're connecting all these phases of the journey, you of course want to make sure that your individual channels are not distracting from that. So again, it's philosophically recognize that we have one relationship, and that relationship should always get better, more specific, more personalized, and more anticipatory. Then once you have that vision, use channels, use an integrated system to ensure that you don't have any drop off, you don't create additional friction, you don't have inconsistencies, and you don't show any sign that you're not the same brand when talking to that customer.
Brian, something you just said, channels are not distracting each other. I think that's such an interesting point. It just reminded me. A few months ago, I was looking for a new, a brokerage company. Like, this is a high value transaction. I'm going to do my research. I went on their website. I interacted with the chatbot. I called. I ended up hanging up because they put me on hold too long. But soon after, I got a marketing email. And I was sent an email because now I'd been identified as a lead. Great. But the marketing email had nothing to do with what I was calling about. And that, for me, was a little off-putting because I've interacted now a few different ways. It wasn't off-putting enough that I didn't engage with them further. I showed up in person and got the financial advice I was looking for to make a decision. But that certain channels can be distracting. So as we're thinking about personalization, as we're thinking about adopting different channels and delivering, it's also like making sure things don't distract and take away from the overall intent that the customer came to you for. So I just wanted to comment because you reminded me.
And I think I'm glad you brought that up, because the truth is, like, now that we have all these touch points, we have unlimited ability to get in touch with our customers, and we don't want to abuse that, and we don't want to devalue that, right? So yes, now we're going to get one customer. We can reach them via their cell phone. We can reach them via their computer. We can advertise to them at different times. And it gets very exciting and very enticing because it's like, I'm going to make sure that that customer knows everything I have to offer. But no, what it is instead say, because of all that, I know that customer, I'm going to make sure they hear what they should hear, what they want to hear, what they need to hear. Use your channels to give the right message to the customer at the right time, not use it to bombard the customers with what you want to say. Be the brand who they need, who they want to hear from. Because when you do that, when you're delivering the right message, when you show respect for what they're looking for, that is when they start to see you as a brand that knows them, that values them, and that's when they start to pledge their loyalty.
You get trust, and trust then begets loyalty.
Absolutely.
I love that. I mean, everything you guys are saying is so relevant, and I think just such great points all around. The piece about, I mean, going back to it, really, Pavna just talked about customers want to be known, and everything that you guys are talking about is demonstrating the importance of showing that you know your customer and using those communication channels to really engage with them in a meaningful way, which is so important. So I want to talk a little bit about some practical steps, because we're talking about how amazing all of this can be, but we need to have kind of a roadmap and some practical steps to actually get there. So Pavna, can you share a little bit more about how we can integrate different channels for this more seamless customer experience?
Yeah, I think first of all, it starts with the channels you currently have. It's not about adding 10 different channels at once. Start with the ones you currently have, what you're currently using, where your customers are engaging with you the most, and try to add some enhancement to those. So for example, if you're using voice a lot, consider the use of AI-based intelligent routing or language detection or sentiment analysis for those voice channels or for your digital channels. Here at Nextiva, we ourselves are doing that. We're using our own intelligent routing, NLP in the IVR, and that's leading to 98% accuracy and understanding our customers and intent. Also being able to add intelligence, as an example, to your chat channels and SMS to summarize the customer dialogue. That can reduce the post-interaction work that agents often have to do. I think just starting with your channels that you currently have, optimizing those, just starting small, getting really good at those, you'll see some really good impact. You'll be able to get some outcomes that you can then use as a business case to get additional investments or to get more teams involved in helping you either add more channels in a meaningful, thoughtful way. And also, if you have other CX initiatives, now if you've shown reduction, going back to those business outcomes I talked about right at the onset, if you've shown reduction in cost, you've boosted productivity because you've optimized these certain channels already with some of the tools that are available to you, then you have that business case and you can get that funding to and support across the organization to join you in your other customer experience initiatives, whether it's channels or whatever else that you have in place, want to put in place. I think secondly, I think it's important to look at your unique customers. Every company has a differentiated sort of a product or experience or narrative, that you're bringing to your customers. So looking at that and understanding, analyzing where it is that your customers want to engage with you. What are you seeing? Also thinking about where the puck is going. So really not just looking at all the best practices that are out there, because there's so many people are doing such great stuff. Really think like about your unique problems, the unique outcomes you're trying to achieve, the unique gaps that you may have, and then build from there. Because the technologies and tools and best practice are all there, but it's like what's going to serve you best is where you start, and then you start to think about how to integrate.
Yeah, and I want to start with that last point, because it's not only about your unique customers, that is super important, right? But I think it's also where you want to go and what customers you want to attract too, because I do think at times we can get very set in our ways. We know our existing customers, we know what they want to see, we know how they want to engage, but things change. And if we want to grow, if we want to stay relevant, if we want more people to be exposed to our message, we have to also think about what's preventing other customers from working with us. Is it just adding one channel that if we added that one channel, we would grow our business by 2-3x? Probably not that simple, but the point being that thinking about also that aspiration and where you want to go as a brand and building that's really important. Now, Pavna, you also brought up a great point, which is starting with a very pragmatic mindset. Now, I don't think either of us would think, I don't think anyone on this call would think right now that it's okay to only have one channel forever and just say, we're going to do one channel really well and move on. That's not what customers are looking for. That's going to frustrate people. They're not going to feel empowered. You're going to miss chances to engage. However, customers are also fundamentally rational. While they have channel preferences, they have communication preferences. At the end of the day, they want to be valued. I'm going to again quote you, they want to be known, and they want a great service outcome, a great experience outcome. And getting it right, even if that means starting with a few channels at first, figuring out how they behave, what they're looking for, what it takes to deliver that experience is the best way to start there, then scale, then expand and integrate everything, and you're going to move in the right direction. Two additional points I want to bring up here. One is on the employee side, because I know it's the era of self-service. We're talking a lot about AI. We're talking about automation. And in many ways, it goes hand in hand with digital. We think of, okay, if we're using digital channels, it's much easier to deploy a chatbot to handle these channels. But remember that the human touch is still fundamentally important. And so really thinking about, okay, we have channels connected. We have the right platform. Everything is integrated. We have the right data. But are our employees trained to actually be able to leverage that data, leverage these new channels to make a connection, to communicate the brand value well, to hear customers and analyze and anticipate their needs? That's going to be extremely important. The second thing we also want to look at is on the metric front. So and this goes right to Pavna's point about getting buy-in, right? We know we want to do it because it feels good. We love making our customers happy, but we also know we report to people who are going to make budgetary decisions, who want to see results. And so being very real about what integration, what seamlessness, what omni-channel means for our metrics and our outcomes is extremely important. So it's very easy to say, okay, if we're going to use, a low-touch digital experience for simple issues, then the people who call are going to have complex ones. Those calls are going to take a little bit longer. That's kind of like the basic way to approach this. The problem, though, is that if we're truly connected, we should be learning so much about these customers that, yes, even if their issue is more complex, because that phone agent knows who this customer is, has actionable context, knows what to say, they should still be more efficient. So thinking about metrics with more nuance, understanding how looking across different channels will affect behaviors, will affect expectations, will affect our ability to deliver service, really being frank about that and holding ourselves accountable for using our integrated touch points to create more value, to create more satisfaction and create more efficiency, and know what that looks like, track what that looks like, communicate what that looks like is going to be so important. So again, omni-channel means you start with the technology framework, you start with the processes, but if you don't think about what this means for results and what it means for people, you're going to fall flat. So it all going hand in hand. You have to think about everything.
Brian, I really liked your comment on metrics because that's so critical. Metrics change based on the industry you're in, and certain calls, certain interactions should take more time, and they prevent bigger problems later on. Medical advice, for instance, somebody from behavioral health issues, for instance. So changing those metrics and changing the KPIs as employees, frontline employees, are kind of being we're positioning them to handle more complex. If we automate the more routine tasks, they're actually solving for the more complex tasks and also the ones that have more emotion. So equipping employees to be able to deliver customer care with empathy. So I know you talked about that training, but there's that empathetic training. And I think that's where the human connection and AI come together, right? You can use AI, you can use emerging technologies, you can use that to enable or empower employees, then in a way where they are able to give more empathetic sort of care to the customers that are coming in. So it's that total experience, customer experience plus employee experience that has to be critical.
And thinking about what empathy means in different channels, right? Like empathy is not always sympathy. Yes, in a deep heart-to-heart conversation, you're talking about someone flying to a funeral or dealing with a medical issue. That's really where that longer term, real conversational sympathy is very important. But if someone's looking for a quick answer, they're about to board a flight and they just want to know, like, is my landing time delayed, or what baggage carousel are my bags at? Empathy there is being as quick as possible and being very respectful. So I think as you start to train agents on this new, more empathetic, more consultative approach, also helping them understand what empathy looks like for different customers at different times in different media. That's part of this future training. That's part of omnichannel because, again, it's not about delivering an equally good experience in all channels. It's delivering an equally relevant experience across all channels. And relevance is going to mean different things at different times. So that's a huge part as well.
Yeah, I mean, you bring me perfectly to my next question here, which is about the agent experience, because we talked a lot about how this is going to impact the customer. But I also want to dive into what this means for the agent. And Brian, you just talked a little bit about how we're going to need to train agents and what that might look like. But I also want to ask you both, what are just some ways that we can support frontline employees in delivering more personalized service? And how can this unified experience support their workflow better?
So one thing I would say here right off the bat is, even though it's super cliche, super obvious, we all know it, the happy agents equal happy customer thing is still extremely valuable. We all, whenever Brooke, you and I speak at sessions, we always ask that to start the session off. The entire room lifts their hands up as that still being relevant, because we know that the happier and more engaged and more empowered our employees are, the better they're going to perform for our customers. And that's more important than ever in the era of AI, right? Because we don't need employees necessarily to share the right information. In fact, there are many cases where a bot is actually going to share information more accurately because it can look across every database in the world in the blink of an eye. And so, that's where, if you're just communicating information, we have technology for that. When we want to engage and build connections, that's where the employee has an enduring role. And emotional happiness, emotional satisfaction, emotional buy-in is extremely important. So thinking about ways to build an encouraging and inviting a wellness-driven experience for those employees is extremely important. Now, how you get there is really where I think we're learning more and more that it's not just the soft culture stuff. I mean, yes, I'm not going to be one of those anti-pizza party guys. I love pizza. I think you should always have pizza parties for your team. But I think we increasingly know that that isn't necessarily what it takes to build real happiness. That's not what drains employees. That's not what engages or disengages them. What engages or disengages them is, frankly, the agent also having a seamless omnichannel experience. If they have to look across 47 different systems, put in 18 different passwords just to answer a basic customer question, that's the stuff that's going to make them feel upset. That's the stuff that's going to make them and put them in a bad mood. That's the stuff that's going to make them not a strong advocate when you're trying to actually connect with your customers. And right now, we see that 61% of contact center executives believe that agents are spending too much time accessing necessary systems. We know that 81% say that they're spending too much time on low value work. And so again, when you have this much distraction, it prevents them from doing a good job. And we know that customers see this as well. only 19% of customers believe that agents appear focused on solving their problem. Forget emotional connections, forget personalization for a second. If 81% of customers don't even feel the agent feels connected and focused, how could they possibly feel valued? How could they possibly trust the outcome they're getting? How could they possibly think that this is going to be a personalized, anticipatory experience? So again, you want agents to be in that combination of emotionally happy and taken care of, connected and not distracted, and then really bought in using a combination of data, strong training, and a strong customer-centric mindset. Put it all together. That's when they're going to deliver support that is as relevant as it is factually accurate, as it is efficient and empowering for the consumer.
I hear that all the time, and we say it here at Nextiva as well, happy agent equals happy customer. But that it's critical to know what makes for a happy agent. And I agree with you. I love the pizza party as well, and I don't mind having like a ping pong table in a company somewhere, but you never use it. What I care about as an employee, and I think most employees care about, is doing high value work, A. And I think it's about like, how can I do this work efficiently, effectively, and drive the outcomes that are going to make an impact on my business, on my company. There are a lot of tools we can place to kind of provide those sort of efficiencies, operational efficiencies. I think we talked a little bit about virtual agents, agent assistants, the real-time transcription, leveraging AI to give them the next best actions so they're not context switching. So they're not looking at 18, 20 different applications and switching to find the right answers at the right time, using sentiment analysis, just simple ways so that our agents or frontline employees are being able to see the sentiment of like customer callers or SMS coming in, having those detection, so they know this is an interaction I need to respond to in a certain way. Those are some of the fine-tuned ways, putting some dynamic scripts, creating automated workflows, so intelligently providing ways where it reduces workloads and is also streamlining processes, it's streamlining operations, it's increasing efficiency, it's increasing accuracy, compliance. There's so many ways. If you put those kinds of tools, you're empowering your employees. They're going to be happier, but they're also going to be able to deliver a really great customer experience. Everything we do for CX has that EX side to it. It's both. It always goes hand in hand, I think. So an important question for us to be all talking about. And we talk a lot about customer, like friction in that customer journey, in that seamless omni-channel experience. Friction in the employee journey is what's causing often also that friction in the customer journey. So I think every time we're evaluating our CX programs or tools or having these discussions, the employee conversation needs to be just as important, if not more so, as the customer conversation, because that employee experience is going to guide that customer experience.
Yeah, and not only is there a direct correlation when it comes to efficiency, but frankly, when an employee is distracted, when they're looking something up in the knowledge base because they can't figure it out, when they're logging in different systems, guess what they're not doing? They're not building a real connection. They're not conversing. They're not focused. And so not only does it create more time, but they miss out on this opportunity to really connect with the customer. And we know, whether we like it or not, whether we want to believe we're going to be in a world where every customer is going to speak to every agent all day, we're realists. We know that, chatbots will absorb a number of issues. We know customers will be self-serving. And so we know that those opportunities to have a real conversation with the customer, human to human, agent to consumer, those are going to become increasingly rare and increasingly special. And that means that when they do happen, we have to make the most of those. We have to use those to really show the humanity of our brand, show our empathy for what that customer wants and who they are. And if the employee cannot do that because they're so distracted, they're going to miss that chance to prove we care about the customer, learn information that can be used to better sell to them, better recommend products, better support them. That's going to be a huge miss. Now, another thing that you mentioned talking about agent effort, the truth is you can measure that. You could look at things like how many times do they have to ask the same question over and over again? How long were they silent during an interaction? How many screens do they have to look across to make something happen? And these are all really, essential things to be considering. Now, Pavna, you kind of pretty much covered the best uses of AI when it comes to in the employee experience. I'm not going to pretend I have a million others because I don't. I think you nailed it there. But one thing I will add is that not only are those use cases going to be valuable for increasing efficiency, increasing what agents can do, but they also send the message of what we're trying to represent, who we're trying to be as an organization. Because the truth is, whether we like it or not, a lot of agents do believe their job is to follow a rigid script, follow a rigid policy, and answer questions, because we make it so hard to do anything else. If we basically say we're investing these technologies to take all that work away so you can do what you're supposed to do, which is build a human relationship with that customer, we are going to condition them to be more relationship oriented. We're going to attract better talent. We're going to have more meaningful experiences. Suddenly the culture goes from answering questions to building connections. That's where we're in the right track. That's where elevating the CX. That's when we're being a brand that customers are actively looking to work with, not just passively tolerating.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, Brian. I think that point about your brand being really everything to the customer, and really protecting that and showing customers that you care about them is so important. And I think it obviously has so much to do with the employee experience, and empowering our employees to actually deliver that in every single interaction. So once we're in the position to do that, we can really thrive. And it's such an exciting time for that. So as we end off here, we have just a few minutes left. I think it's helpful to understand a timeline for where we want to go. Where do we want to be when we look back next year, 1 year ahead? How can we ensure that when we do look back on this moment, we're doing everything that we possibly can to meet these outcomes and secure incredibly seamless experiences for our customers? So Pavna, any insight on how we can do that?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking back of what we talked about briefly already, which is starting small, right? Starting with where you currently are, adding to it, optimizing those channels, find and customizing, kind of really taking a holistic view of your unique customer. And I think Brian's addition to my comment about that, who you want your future customer to be. So as we look to the future, thinking really, a year from now, who is that future like customer look like for you? And what do we need to put in place now to get there? And one of the things is, as we're looking at like the current tech stack you have, is like making sure not to acquire more of that tech debt burden, having more of a platform-based approach, making steps towards that. I think as choosing different providers and vendors, looking at who's got open APIs, who's got an open architecture, so that as you're growing a year from now, 5 years from now, as the customers are changing and the expectations are changing, as there's more innovation coming our way, you're in a place to grow. Like your technologies, the systems you've got in place, have the flexibility to grow with you and keep up with the changes that are coming. That's really what comes top of mind for me. But I would love to hear, Brian, your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, so I really believe there's two things we want to be prioritizing. So one, we often we talk about, oh, let's use AI for simple issues, humans for complex ones. I want to challenge our community to do something a little bit different. I would say, why do we allow simple repetitive issues to even happen? Why do they, if we know it's an obvious issue that doesn't require human brain power to solve, why haven't we figured out a way to not have it be an issue altogether? Why haven't we figured out a way to make it easy for customers to not have to worry about when their payments due, not have to worry about how to change their password? Like thinking about what repetitive issues, not that we can deflect to a bot, but that we can get rid of altogether. And frankly, when you have an omni-channel ecosystem, you can really look at what's coming into our contact center. What are the root causes of these issues? And what can we do to prevent them from becoming issues? That's going to be extremely important. The second thing is then looking at channels, not as sort of it doesn't matter where this is happening way, but in more of a cohesive journey. So being purposeful. What unique purpose does our email channel serve? What unique purpose does our phone channel, our chatbot, our messaging channel, our social channels, leveraging them to cohesively deliver different messages based on who's using them, what the context is, and what the customer is looking to achieve. Using channels in a complementary way, not sort of as equal substitutes for each other. Because when customers know that we are a brand that is always looking for creating value for them, taking that journey to the next level, building a narrative for them, they're going to behave the way we want them to, and they're going to be more receptive when we do want to sell something, when we do want to market something, when we do want to promote something, because they know that wherever we are, it has their value in mind, it has an outcome in mind. So again, let's get rid of the repetitive issues altogether, and then let's look at a purpose to our channels so they add value and play a unique role in the journey, not that they play an equivalent role, because then we're just going to create fragmentation if they don't work together.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for joining us here. I so enjoyed hearing all of your insights. It's such an important topic right now. I also want to mention that we do have a survey on the left-hand side of your screen. You're going to see it in that little box. If you want to learn more about anything that we talked about today and discuss with the Nextiva team in a one-on-one strategy call, please fill it out and you can learn more. So thank you, Brian and Pavna, so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks a lot.